Okay, hello. So, our last week of Hamlet, and I'm calling this revision and research. You won't be conducting research, you'll be reading research to inform and instruct this week. We have 2 creative analysis assignments, just like last week, because the organization assignment is so streamlined. I'm just asking you to revise your essays. So, without further ado, creative analysis. We are going back to new criticism. Just briefly, I want to think about this question that we began the unit with. How do you study a text? It's a controversial question, and as I said, it has launched centuries of argument and debate. One of your tasks today will be to decide where you fall in that debate, and it's based on your studies so far as a student, as a literature student, but just your feelings at this moment as well. And I've tried to put this question right in the middle of having done a lot of research with the crime and punishment piece and no research with your timed right around Hamlet. So these are the 2 ways. Study a text for what it is, what it offers to the world, or study a text within its context. And this is very much where we are now in our final week of Hamlet. So I'm going to take us to one of the most famous arguments on Hamlet, very much in this world. And it comes from a book called Ulysses. And what is there to say about Ulysses except that it is perhaps the finest book in the English language, and if you're looking for a challenge this summer, I give that to you. So Stephen Greenblatt references this scene from Ulysses where the main character, Stephen Dedalus, who is modeled after Odysseus. The whole book is modeled after the Odyssey. He is retorting to his friend or sort of colleague on this very debate. Russell says, we have the Shakespeare plays. When we read the poetry, what does it matter to us how the poet lived? We have King Lear. It is immortal. Essentially, the author does not matter. They give us the art. Daedalus says, though, in response, yes, but think about the play and who made it. Is it possible that then William Shakespeare, a ghost by absence to his son Hamnet, who died, and in the vesture of buried Denmark, speaking his own words to his son who died, Hamlet or Hamnet, is it possible, I want to know, or probable, that he did not draw out the logical conclusion of these premises? In short, Stephen Dedalus argues back, Shakespeare is everything. He matters. He matters to Hamlet. We cannot read Hamlet without considering Shakespeare. We cannot read Hamlet without considering how that play came to be. And that is what you'll do this week when you read Stephen Greenblatt's essay. You'll get into the world of how Shakespeare constructed Hamlet, perhaps why he constructed Hamlet, and what makes Hamlet so extraordinary. And having done that, you will be well positioned to respond to the creative analysis question. And so your first task, I want you to think about this and offer your opinion. At the other end of the unit, we have both perspectives. We have your timed rights on Hamlet's most famous soliloquy, which you wrote in isolation without any context for the play. And then we have a unit where you've read the play. You know why or where he speaks those words, and you have even some contextual information around it, especially in Greenblatt that I'm giving you this week. What do you think? Are you a new criticism theorist? Do you find the beauty of Hamlet's soliloquy stood alone for you, and you can unpack it with all of the meaning and richness that you needed? Or do you find that you are a historical studies theorist, that in learning about Hamlet and learning about Shakespeare, you became inspired? Your imagination was set on fire. Which is it? There are benefits to both paths. It's a bit artificial. You can definitely be both. But for the sake of this, I want to know where you feel you fall, having done that timed right on either side of the feelings that you have here. So we'll do that. Task 1 then is very much personal response. So why? I'm going to put this in a bigger context for us before I move on to task 2. There is one last thing. I am giving you our mega research paper on crime and punishment here. It's a compilation of everything you wrote I built in transitions in between the sections, but I tried to keep them light so that it flows more or less as one cohesive piece. I'd like you to read it, please. Comment when you learn something interesting from one of your peers. So we too have engaged in this deep study of character, just like Greenblatt does with Hamlet. Reading through this, what inspires or engages you? Does it enrich your sense of crime and punishment in a way that the text couldn't do on its own? Or is it distracting? Do you find that the book itself stood alone? And that's really the challenge here, to unpack and piece out. This, though, the mega research paper we did, is a useful model for what we're going to do next. When you return from spring break, which is coming up, I'm going to immediately assign your longer literary analysis paper. I've kind of meant to do this all year. I keep waiting for the moment, and I've decided I want it to be open where you can choose any text to study in it. So I put it towards the end of the year. It's a 3 to 5 page research paper, and you're going to write on any topic you choose, on any text you choose. If you choose poetry, you can choose more than one text. If you choose a novel, I ask that you restrict it to that one novel. You might spend some time this break thinking about what you want to do. You can either look at it from a new criticism perspective, where you're looking at the novel for some literary component, or you can take the historical studies angle and find a topic that matters to that book or piece of poetry, just as we did for our mega research paper. So essentially, your crime and punishment research assignment multiplied by about 10. Don't have to do anything now, but this is coming, so something to have in mind. And this will give us an opportunity to workshop the same paper over about 3 weeks, which will fine-tune your composition skills as you head into the exam. All right, so that aside, task 1. Task 2 is to more deeply engage with what Greenblatt is saying. So I've assigned this Greenblatt article or essay. I think Stephen Greenblatt is a wonderful writer. I really enjoy reading his publications. He is Shakespearean. He's a student of Shakespeare and medieval literature. He works at Harvard and teaches classes on topics like this. So he's an expert. As he writes this essay, I'm reminded of an interview he did years ago with Charlie Rose, where he's so interested in the changing language around religious rituals. When England became Protestant, moved away from Catholicism, which we should remember was right before Shakespeare came to be of age and was probably still happening around Shakespeare. So Shakespeare had to bury his son, as the language of burial changed from "we bury you" to "we bury him." So this distance was growing between life and death. That alone is thoughtful work that Greenblatt is offering to the conversation. And it comes from this article or this essay, along with some other really important ideas. I think he posits some theses that we can apply directly to Hamlet. He notes that Shakespeare evolved in his narration when he was trying to write in the mind of character. He started with a stilted version from Richard III to the more authentic version in Richard II, and to finally Julius Caesar, where Brutus has the least stagey narration. And it's all of that evolution that set Shakespeare up to write Hamlet. Hamlet contains, as he puts it here, an intense representation of inwardness, called forth by a new technique of radical excision. By taking us inside of the mind of Hamlet, but leaving out the clear, thoughtful rationale that we might expect to find there, Shakespeare introduces a new world of narration, of literature. He presupposes characters like Raskolnikov. As I say here, if Shakespeare could dive into the mind of Hamlet and reveal that, contrary to our own wishes, we do not exactly know what we believe or think. He would create a play of immeasurable suspense and humanity. And he does. What Greenblatt is describing is stream of consciousness. Now, this is my claim. I'm not getting this from Greenblatt, but I'm claiming it. It's my insight. just like yours that you're producing in this class. What Greenblatt calls unmistakable marks of actual thinking is, in Hamlet, a proto-form of stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness is a type of narration in which a character's thoughts are related through continuous dialogue or flow of thought to describe the inner workings of their mind. Famous for this is Joyce. Ulysses is a trophy to stream of consciousness, but also others. And I argue here, Fyodor Dostoevsky, who we see use this kind of thought pattern in Raskolnikov. Shakespeare is ahead of these writers by 250 years, but I am arguing that that's right. That's why he's a genius. Shakespeare always seems to get there first. He always seems to have that literary idea first when we think about him in the context of the modernist writers that we're reading so much of now. So, stream of consciousness. What is it exactly, and how does it relate to your task? Well, 4C on the AP Lit exam or in the curriculum asks us to identify details, diction, and syntax that reveal a narrator's perspective, which is exactly what I'm trying to do here with my claim. Stream of consciousness is something that you'll see frequently because it's been around now and in vogue for over 100 years. It's a type of narration where a character's thoughts are related through that continuous flow. It's characterized by incomplete thoughts, non-traditional sentence structures, punctuation, and then sensory details. Because if we're in the mind of a character, they're going to be taking in the world, images, and sensory items as they think. It deepens our insights into the narrator's mind. Well, when that comes into Hamlet's world, we intimately know then that he doesn't really know what he's doing. It is the stream of consciousness that allows us to see just how troubled Hamlet is. He is whirling in the opaque and changeable world of his mind. He does have these bright flashes of passing insight. He condemns others, but then he turns on himself. He's even-handed in his justice at times. And so at times he seems phenomenally rational, but at others, out of control. And that is what I want you to find, a moment like this. So just a little clip. I'm going to do this again with the to be or not to be speech, but it's me pointing out, non-traditional punctuation, sensory details, moments where he interrupts himself, unfinished thoughts. I would like you to identify a moment where you see that, where you see him shifting into stream of consciousness narration, and then explore the effect of the narration. What does it reveal about him more deeply? Or what is the power of it on the play, on the work as a whole? My model comes to us from the timed right excerpt we keep looking at, the very beginning of that famous monologue or soliloquy, depending on how you stage it. So you've seen this. I don't need to read the actual text. I want to point out one piece of my analysis, and then if you want to read the whole thing, press pause and do so. We haven't talked a lot about iambic pentameter. We will in the poetry unit that we do last. But this first famous line, to be or not to be, that is the question. So often we place the stress on that because it sounds natural to our ears. That is the question. And when you hear actors recite this, they might do that. But I offer a different insight, one that I heard from my professor. If it's truly iambic pentameter, then we should put the stress evenly. And so it should sound like this. To be or not to be, that is the question. That is the question. We are in Hamlet's mind. He has thought about this question before. Knowing that sets up the rest of the stream of consciousness in this monologue. There are moments where he is clear of mind because he has thought about this before. But then there are moments where he sinks into his reverie and he loses a sense of where he is. And that's where stream of consciousness takes over. I argue here, this is everything. He cannot kill his uncle, not yet, because he cannot stop thinking about what it means. And that's your job. That's your motto. Good luck.